Okay, so let's go ahead and go into my Git repository here. And we're going to go into LNL project. And here you can see the source codes, the Ansible playbooks. This is where you want to click, and you could copy all of these here, modify it as you wish. You could copy and paste it, or you could clone it. Completely up to you. But you're gonna make sure you put this onto your Ansible server. Okay, so let's go into our Ansible server. Let's go ahead and clear the screen. Let's go back into our home directory, and we are in the Ansible admin. So let's go ls-l. Actually, we need to go into this directory, docker ls-l, and here you see all the playbooks here. Go ahead and ignore all this old playbook. I was actually trying to test some things out. Okay, so let's go through this one by one. Let's vim into the Docker file here. Okay, so what this is doing is that it's pulling the Tomcat image and it's going with the latest version. And with Tomcat 9, there's this issue where if you don't include this command, then you basically will get an error. I believe it's 404 or 504, something like that. But so go ahead and just copy this. Basically, we're saying copy -r everything in this directory to this destination, and then we're gonna copy current directory war file into the tomcat./webapps directory. Okay, and if you're wondering where we got this war file, we'll talk about that in a bit. Okay, so let's go through this one by one. We'll just go down the line. Vim ansible.config. So this is our default config file. Basically what we're saying is host key checking, false, inventory current directory, this inventory file, forks5. And this means that if you enable this, you'll be running with escalated privileges by default. So I just commented this out because when we run a certain task on a playbook, it's going to throw you an error, and we'll talk about that in a bit. Okay, so let's go into deploy Docker. Okay, so this is our Docker host that we're going to specify in our inventory file. Become yes. So this means run with escalated privileges. So we're going to stop the container, and this is going to be our image name. State's going to be stopped. And we're going to have this ignore error here. Basically, when it runs this task, and if this container doesn't exist, it's going to throw you an error and stop the whole playbook. So if that's the case, we're just going to ignore that error and proceed. Same thing with here. Remove the container, your image name. Remove image, your Docker login, LNL is the image, and the version, latest. I actually don't think I need this latest here because the tag is already latest, but we'll keep that there for now. Then we're going to run the container onto this port. Okay, so let's go quit. I'm going to vim into our inventory, and here we're going to specify our hosts. So we have our Ansible admin, and in the Ansible admin, this is our server, our Docker server. This is the default Docker that I have, which I use normally almost every day for testing deployments and whatnot. And this is our Docker server that we just configured. Okay. And this is just to basically you're adding these hosts into this group, the Docker host into the Docker host group. You actually don't need this, but I just make it a habit of doing that. Okay, we're gonna vim into the LNL. lnl.yaml. All right, so we are creating our image on Ansible. So our host is Ansible, which is the group Ansible. You could either put the Ansible username that you specified, or this is the group. So I just put it on the group. Okay, so we're gonna remove any web app images that has this name. Again, if it doesn't exist, it's just gonna skip. Then we're gonna build the web app image into this directory, the name, the tag, and I'm putting push here false because I don't want to push it yet. Because we're gonna push, we need to tag it and then push it. So in this task, we have the image name, tag, Docker name, or Docker login, and then the name and tag, and then push. The source is local. Okay, so before you do this, don't forget you need to log into your Docker account, which is Docker login, and then put in your credentials. All right, then we're actually gonna run this command first. We're gonna run this playbook first because it's gonna install Docker onto our Docker machine. Now there's a lot going on here. So basically we're specifying Docker test. And there's a lot going on here because there's a few things that you have to do with Docker. So all this commands is actually taken from the Docker documentation. And to build these Ansible playbook, you could get this command on the Ansible documentation as well. Okay. So yeah, there's a lot going on here. Basically, this is just installing Docker. And this is Apache 2 service. You could delete this if you want. I just put it here just because I was testing running the web app on Apache. But you could go ahead and take that out. You could take this out if you want. But at the end, if you notice, we didn't do an apt install and app update right when the server started, because we're actually going to do that here in the playbook. Okay, so we're actually going to run this command in a bit. Go ahead and quit this. And the last thing is the web app.war. So this is where the Jenkins is actually pushing the build onto this directory. As we stated here, opt/docker. Okay, so let's go ahead and try run this playbook. We are going to do Ansible playbook, and we're going to run setup.yaml. But before we do this, I want to double check and make sure that the host is correct. So we got Docker server on this IP address. Let's go ahead and copy this. Copy. Make sure the IP address is correct. 34.2.11 looks good. Let's go ahead and quit this. Go back into our setup.yaml. And it's always good to double check so you don't run it on the wrong host. So you can see the host is wrong here. Let's paste that. Save and quit. Then we'll go ahead and run the playbook. Ansible playbook setup.yaml. Then if you have any doubts, we could do a check first, see if there's any errors. Okay, so we ran into an error. Cannot find requested service Apache 2. All right. So this is going to take a while. I'm just going to go ahead and pause the video while this loads. and runs, and I'll see you guys in a bit. Okay, we are back, and it looks like everything worked. So this failed because it was checking if Apache was installed, but it obviously wasn't because this was just a dry run. So when we actually ran it, it installed the Apache service, and the error is gone because it actually is installed. But we actually didn't need this whole step, so if you guys wanted to just remove it, you can. Okay, so now that that's done, we need to go back into our Docker server here, and we need to add the Docker admin to the Docker group. Now we couldn't do this before because Docker was not installed, therefore the group didn't exist. So go ahead and do that. User mod -a g docker admin. Permission denied. We need to do sudo here. Okay, so that's done. Now I think everything is good to go. Okay, so let's go back into our Jenkins, and before we do this, let's go back into our dashboard. We'll manage Jenkins. Go into system here. Scroll all the way down and just double check if the SSH is working. So test your configuration, because if this is not working, then the whole pipeline is not going to work because we are using password-based authentication. Okay, so now that that's done, everything looks like it's ready to go. Okay, so let's go into our build. Let's go and leave the page. Okay, so we configured everything. We configured our GitHub to pull the repository, main branch, pull the GitHub every minute, and make sure, double check everything's good. POM, XML, clean install, Ansible, control OK, web app target, Docker, and here is our two playbooks, right? Playbook 2, let's go back into here. Let's go and clear the screen here. ls-l, we'll do cat lnl, L and L, and then we'll do cat deploy. Okay. So our first playbook is going to be run Ansible playbook /opt /docker and the file. So directory to the file. Make sure you add your semicolon, or else Jenkins is going to read all of this as one command. Then we're also going to add a sleep here, because what Jenkins is going to do is that when it runs this command, it's going to immediately run this playbook. And if this playbook is not even finished and it runs this other playbook, you're going to either run into issues, or it's going to, it's going to build and deploy a container that's not updated. So just give this playbook some time to complete, basically. Okay, so it looks like everything's ready to go. We could go ahead and build this normally to test. So go ahead, save and apply. Go back to your build. Now, one thing I forgot to mention is that this is where you could tell where our target file is and our war is. So web app /target, and we specify this in our build configure. Okay, so let's go ahead and test this. We'll click build now. It's gonna run. We could go ahead and look at the output. Okay, so it's gonna build the Maven project, the web app .war. It's reading the POM. It's fetching the GitHub here. It's running the test. It looks like Maven success, server success. The web app is successed. And now it's trying to connect to the Ansible control machine to go ahead and run our playbooks. And we'll see if we run into an error here, which we didn't. Perfect, and it finished. All right, so what did this do? So if we go into our Ansible here, we could do ps docker images, and we could see that it created this image here. And then what it did is that we'll see if it pushed to our Docker hub. Go into Docker hub. Go log in. Sign in. Okay. Yep. And it did push our image to Docker hub. Pushed a minute ago. And then we need to log into our. I didn't use this server. I should have used this server actually, but my Jenkins had this server, so we'll just go ahead and log into this one. I mean, it's the same thing. We'll run into git bash, cd into home, downloads, and paste that. Make this full screen. Okay, so we'll do Docker images. Docker images. Okay, so I have a couple images here. This is not part of the project. Like I said, I use this Docker daily for other projects. So we see our Docker image here. So let's go back into this here. So far we deployed our code, or we're actually testing our code right now. So we skipped this step here, which we'll test right after this. So we'll pull the code, build the code with Maven, copy the artifact, the .war to Ansible. Ansible ran its playbook to push and build the image, and then it ran a second playbook to run the container. Docker pulled the image, and we are going to confirm that. Let's go back into our here. Docker ps-a. Our container did not run. Okay, so let's go ahead and troubleshoot this. Okay, so I was actually in the wrong server, completely my mistake. So Docker ps-a, it looks like our image is running here on port 8081. Let's go ahead and test that. So go back into our instances, Docker, public IP address. Okay, on port 8081. Let's see if this works. All right, so it pulls up the default Tomcat image. We type web app here. You can see that our web app is completely hosted onto a container. Perfect. All right, so let's go check if our serverless technologies are working. Okay, so we're the user. We just pulled the web app from our Docker container. Now let's go see if our API Gateway Lambda and DynamoDB is working. Let's go back into here. Let's go into get. We'll get a picture of my dog. Perfect. And there she is. Isn't she gorgeous? Okay. So now that we know that that's working, we know that our whole pipeline is working. Now we need to test if our, let's go back to, now we need to test if we commit a code, will this whole pipeline work? Let's find out. So basically you're gonna have to do a git clone or git pull to pull the repository wherever you specified it on Jenkins. So my own is in, I think it's in DevOps. Let's see. ls-l. No, it's in cd slash e slash. I think it's in LNL project. ls cd into LNL project. ls. Yep, okay, so it is here. So we'll do cd into this web app here, ls, cd into the source, cd into main, cd into web app. Okay, and let's go ahead and edit our index.html. So you could edit anything you want here. I recommend just try testing, editing the titles. I'm not gonna have you guys use this web app. I'll have a separate web app for you guys to use, since this is my personal web application. But basically, when you're gonna test the commit, just change any of the text. Try not to change like the code itself. So I have here a spelling error, right? So let's correct this. Okay, so let's save and quit. Let's do git add, git commit -m. We'll just spelling error fix. Okay. Git push origin main. We got to git pull here first. Okay, so let's go ahead and now let's type in L. Yep. Okay, so let's try again. Index JSP. Let's actually change this. Let's do wolf. Let's save and quit. Git add, git commit -m. Spelling fix. Okay, git push origin main. Okay, so let's go ahead and minimize this. Let's go back into our Jenkins. Now, and here we go. We see that it's already pulling. We just have to wait here. Go back to our Docker host. So this is 3 minutes ago, and we'll see if this updates after the whole pipeline is finished. So let's just check here, console output. Again, pulling for our GitHub. Testing. And then it's SSHing into our Ansible control machine to run both the playbooks. Might take a while. Okay, so that's success. Let's go ahead and go into our Docker host. ps-a, and there you go. The whole pipeline succeeded. Perfect. So we could go ahead and test the website again, just to make sure working. Okay, so it looks like it's working. Perfect. All right, so just a review. Well, if you guys completed this whole video, congratulations. You set up this whole architecture, which is pretty cool. It's pretty advanced. It's not up to standards. I mean, in Jenkins, we should be using a Sonar Cube. But, you know, it's fine. It's just a lab. So what happened here is that when the developer commits a code to GitHub, Jenkins pulls that through SCM and pulls the code, builds the code, runs the playbooks after it copies the artifacts to Ansible server, runs the first playbook, pushes the images, and builds the image to Docker Hub. deploys the container by the second playbook. Docker pulls the image, and then in the front end, the users get the web app, and whatever they do on the web app, it calls the API gateway, runs the CRUD operations through Lambda, and stores it in the DynamoDB table. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next one.